Okay, I think it's just gone 7 o'clock, so we'll start tonight's meeting. Welcome everybody. First OSC meeting of this municipal year. A fairly short agenda this evening, so I don't think we'll be here for too long, but some important items to discuss. So we'll crack on with the agenda. So we've got apologies for absence and substitutions. And I've got Councillor Driscoll, who's been substituted by Councillor Kingston, Councillor Wesson, Councillor Ball, who's been substituted by Councillor Hirsch, and I've got apologies from Councillor Nagpal for late arrival. And so it's everybody, I think, apart from Councillor Anderson, I suspect will be here in a moment.
And Councillor Haley's just joined us virtually, I think.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to find out if it's her or not.
Okay. Okay. Declarations of interest? No, we have none. Matters to be considered in private? There are none. And then we'll go to the minutes. So we've got a whole bunch of minutes from the previous year. So we've got the minutes of the meeting held on 21st of February 2023. Let's just find them. This was the calling meeting, Warren Farm. Everybody happy with the minutes? They agree? No, Councillor Hirsch?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a comment.
Sure.
I did actually attend this call-in, and I listened very closely to Doctors Cormack and Spencer. And I think there's a detail missing here, which is rather important. And the detail is that Warren Farm protects endangered species. That's why it's not just a wild area, which you can replace with another wild area. It's a place which actually kind of is a habitat of, he mentioned 20 endangered species. And that, of course, is a really core point, that you can't just say, oh, let's rewild another piece and lose this. If you lose that, you're actually kind of getting rid of these endangered species. And that detail is missing here.
Yes, Councillor.
So the minutes are a summary of the proceedings that happened. They don't capture every single piece of detail that is spoken in the meeting. If you look at page, sorry, it's not very clear to see because I think it's overlaid the page numbers, but it looks like it's page 4 in the minutes. There's a very high level summary. As you can see, I've got one paragraph here for the very lengthy detailed speeches that the doctors made, but you will notice it does say that placing sports pitches on the site would destroy the habitat and the species who live there, most notably skylarks. So I think that detail is included in there, but as I say, it's not in the exact detail that they spoke to it on, because we don't do a verbatim record of what was in there. So what I'd say is, if you do want to propose, my advice on this is, if you want to propose an amendment to the minutes to include that, you need to give me the wording that you want to insert there. It will need to be moved and seconded in this meeting, and then the committee would need to agree that amendment to the minutes to make that change.
Yeah, he's talking about habitats and skylarks, but the word endangered species doesn't appear anywhere. And it's really just that expression of endangered species, that's what makes Warren Farm really special. That's what is Warren Farm different from my garden, which is also quite wild, but hasn't got any endangered species. And so just adding this, it's a habitat of endangered species. He mentioned 20. I'm not fussy about the 20, but about these endangered species, I think is very important.
So I think what you're proposing here is inserting the word endangered before species. Is that correct? Yeah.
Where, in which paragraph did that?
That is the second paragraph of item 5 of that set of minutes. So in your if you're looking at your documents, it's page 4 in the document pack. Page 4, paragraph 2, and it is yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it's the 4th line. So we'll be inserting the word endangered between habitat and the species who live there. So it would read instead habitat and the endangered species who live there.
That's proposed. Anyone like to second that? Yeah, councillor Rice has seconded. Any comments? Any comments from? No. Okay, is that agreed? Possible? We have to agree them? Yeah. Okay, that's agreed. Change the minutes. Thank you. So
Thank you.
with that caveat, no, thank you, councillor Hirsch. Are we happy to agree the minutes of that meeting? Great. Next set of minutes are from the meeting on the 20th of April, which was the Safer Partnership Annual Report. Are we happy to agree the minutes? I see nodding heads. Yes, that's agreed. Thank you. And then the next item, the final set, will be the meeting on the 27th of April, which was really just that sort of tidy up at the end of the year. Are we happy to agree them? Agreed. Great. Thank you very much. Next item then is going to be the work programme.
Yeah, sorry, I was getting some
Sorry.
feedback from a colleague. Yes, so as you can see, members, we have the work programme presented for the committee for the year ahead. This has been developed working with the two strategic directors that this committee is has been assigned under this new structure to scrutinise. So that's Emily Hill, who's the strategic director of resources, and Amanda Askham, who's the strategic director of strategy and change. Additionally, this committee is also tasked with taking a look at some of the issues that might cut across the whole of the council. So the more strategic issues that wouldn't fit neatly in one of the other panels, or perhaps it's something that has such a sufficient risk in terms of reputation or finances that it's best looked at in this committee rather than the scrutiny panels that are looking at the other strategic directorates. Some of the reasoning behind that is that actually we've got the chairs of all the different panels here who've got the grasp of a bit of detail in those areas, and we can bring that knowledge together and you know do a really good job of scrutinising those important issues. Just as a reminder, the work programme isn't set in stone. It's a living document. It changes month by month. We do have quite a lot of work that that goes into programming all of the work programmes, including the work programme meetings that we've just done quite a lot of. So you would all been involved in your work programme meetings for your panels. We also have, if you're a panel chair or vice chair, you will go to the quarterly work programme meeting where we'll look at all the work programmes together and make sure we haven't got any duplication and make sure everything's assigned properly. So we do review this on a regular basis, but likewise, it is completely open to any member who wants to put something on an agenda. So, any of your members in your groups, if they want to raise an issue, they can raise them with myself or the chair, and we can add it on and see where it fits into the overall work programme of the different committees and this one as well. And again, also, as this is the work programme for this panel, for this committee, if there's anything that you think we've missed in this work programme, please just let us know. Now's the time to raise it. We can have a look into it, see if it's something that fits in with this committee, whether we've got time to do it, when the best time is to do it, and we can come back to you and let you know on that. So if you have anything to add to them tonight, I think this is the sort of forum for some discussion. We can take it away and see how that fits in throughout the year after consulting with officers and others as well. So this is your work programme. So I'm happy for any comments, questions, or discussion. I'm happy to take those on.
That's all right.
Thank you. So rather than add to it, maybe I could end up actually taking away, because one thing we did discuss in my pre-agenda meeting from my scrutiny panel on housing environment is whether it might be something that people might want to do is to take away the parking report from overview and scrutiny and bring that into my panel for this year round, since we are looking at the transport side as well. Because I think it's been very much my concern is that we are looking at a lot of housing issues, and I want to make sure that we do cover the environment side as well and give that some kind of half decent weighting. So that might be something, but it's really up to other people to have a view on as well, if that's something that really should be discussed here at the higher panel, as it were.
I'll leave it to the chair to make the final judgment, but I think what you've suggested there makes a lot of sense. You'll know it's not on the work programme for this committee because I think when we looked at it, it was thought that perhaps that wasn't strategic and cross-cutting enough, and probably did fall into that that area for yourself. So if that's something that you want to take on, then I'm sure, you know, I'll let the chair give a view on that one.
I think it makes sense. I quite agree. We can have, sorry, I think it makes sense, Councillor Rice, and we can have a chat offline about that, but I think it fits in with the work that your panel is going to do. I don't have any issues there. Makes sense. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. No, I just want to say I think that hits the right spot for the year. As you said, or as Sam said, I think gives us a strategic overview of various things that are cutting across the council. So fully support. It's a good start. I could support this work programme.
No, thank you. And as Sam said, this is a living document. It can change. We may have to change some of the topics if papers aren't ready, or we want to take something more urgently. So there's quite a bit of flexibility there. Councillor Hirsch.
I was almost tasked by John Ball to ask about the Broadway living aspect here, which is end of November. And he mentioned that is very much delayed by a year or so, whether that could be brought forward. And I would like to add the question, and forgive my ignorance, this surely has got lots of financial implications. Should that come, or could that come before the budget discussion?
So it is delayed. We had hoped to do it at the end of the last municipal year, but there's a new strategic director just went into post. So a little bit early to take that on board. The reason for the November rather than October, which would make sense, is that we want to do the budget work in October. So that it's about having the budget meeting in October to get the ball rolling. So it helps us with doing some earlier budget scrutiny, which this committee doesn't normally do. So it would drift too late for November. I think that's the rationale, isn't it?
Yeah. So the timings are quite deliberate. You know, first, I think it's really important that if we're going to scrutinise Broadway living, that the strategic director that we bring in to question about it is fully briefed, understands the issues, understands and has a grasp on what's going on, and also has you know, a clear idea on the way forward that he wants to take it. So you know, I think that whilst it's only a month's difference, I think that will just help to ensure that we can give it the correct amount of questioning, and we've got the correct amount of knowledge and understanding there, so it can be done properly. And the other side of things as well is that the budget, when we take the budget in October, it's at an earlier stage, and it still gives a bit of time to influence things potentially. Once we start getting towards the latter part of November, it gets very busy in that department because they're waiting on tenterhooks for the financial settlement, and a lot of the information they need for setting the budget starts coming together. So there's a deliberate reason why these are that way around, and that is the rationale behind it. You're right in that there is some crossover with the budget and the Broadway living side of stuff, but you know, that could be argued for anything, really. And you know, there are some financial risks there, but and I'm sure that will be drawn out, and those sort of questions could probably be asked in the October meeting around the budget. So you know, I think it's a good idea to, you know, keep that in mind, perhaps, you know, in that meeting, if you wanted to ask some questions around that. But you know, the timing is deliberate. It's not an accident that they're that way around.
Thanks, Sam. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Ty?
Great, thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to ask about the, I know we did a police panel a while ago, and obviously we have a session on the police, but there is now a police panel. I just wanted to ask, was that kind of considered when we're putting together the programme, or is it deemed that we kind of were going to cover it enough at the new police panel that we don't need to look at it again? It was a very good session. I joined online at the time, traveling from the airport, but I remember it was a really good session. I'm really delighted that it is a panel, just to kind of understand, was that something we looked at also considering? No,
the report will still be considered, but because we've got the Councillor Padder's panel, it's going to be going over to his panel. So we'll still look at it in the same way. Okay. Well, I think that's it. No more comments, questions. Thank you very much. All the comments noted. Now we'll go on to the next item, which is looking at the the report of the Health and Adult Social Services Scrutiny Panel and Scrutiny Panel 1. Chairs aren't here to present their reports. So, but I know we have panel members members of this panel who were on those panels. So I don't know if anybody would like to talk to, we'll start with the health panel. If councillors Harbridge or Conti would like to say anything about the panel.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, sorry, I
Slightly
thought they might be here.
but,
Sorry.
in terms of the panel, I think in terms of the things that we looked at last year, I thought I'm just talking off the head of my head in terms of stuff that I thought was the most sort of interesting things that we looked at. One was about learning disabilities. So we actually had I forgot the name of the organisation, but there was a gentleman with a learning disability who came who chairs an organisation that works with the council to look at how services can be improved for people with learning disabilities, both in health and from a council perspective. And I thought that was quite eye-opening in terms of, especially in terms of how people access services. And I know that there's a section in the report here that talks about those particular that particular meeting. So that I thought that was good. And I think that, you know, looking at access to service, in particular the people who aren't, you know, digitally able to access things digitally, cross cuts, not just people with learning disabilities, but, you know, people potentially elderly, etc. And I thought that was key and something that was useful to learn in the year. In terms of, we had a session about inpatient mental health services, and I know that that's going to come up again. I think actually next week's health scrutiny panel, we're looking at again. I think there was quite a bit of concern about some of the restructure and how some of that was going to impact people in the borough, in particular, how if patients are inpatients, how family and friends potentially could visit if they're going to have to travel longer distances. So I'm hoping that we're going to get some further details at the panel next week in terms of how that plan of work by West London Mental Health is progressing. So I think they were two of, I think probably the most, that I thought were the most eye-opening bits of the panel last year. But that's really me sort of being thrown on the deep end. I've had more time to think about it if I knew you were going to ask me to sort of semi-present it.
Well, thank you, Councillor Conti. Yeah, bit mean to me. Councillor Mohammed, you were on the panel as well, weren't you? I think.
I was last year, and just to make a suggestion, last year it was like Councillor Conti said, that there was a lot of focus on people with disability, but this year perhaps they can focus on women and children. There was no sort of a dedication on the other parts of health services, but also there was a good presentation done on accessing GPs. There was a good presentation, but I would like that to be followed up, because one of the key challenges all residents have is accessing GP and the length of time that they access. So that, and it was a good presentation, but there hasn't been a follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Corday.
Yeah, following, I was going to highlight the same point. GP survey was done, and the presentation, I think it was quite good. The patients were complaining, GPs have not been giving appointments. They don't see patients face to face. Still, we are having the same problems. But the survey's outcome was that Ealing's doctors were the worst, not seeing their patients than other boroughs. So I think they were still, NHS was still working on this issue. But I think the latest, I think, I have forgotten that doctor's name, told us that the patients who needs urgent care, doctors are seeing them. They've started seeing them inpatient. So I think that was the crucial bit, because we received, even in our surgeries, people were coming to see us. They are not getting appointments from the GPs. They are making phone calls, but they have to wait for a long time. When GPs call them, if they missed one call, then the GPs are not calling them back. So it was quite a mishaps with patient care. So they are still looking into it.
Thank you, councillors. Sorry for springing that on everybody, but obviously the chair's not here. Any other questions or comments from members of the panel?
Sorry, I had my hand up. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
I was going to bring this up next week, but I think we had quite a focus on sort of inpatient mental health service. But I think actually looking at outpatient, where the vast majority of people who are accessing mental health service do that on an outpatient basis. And I think I raised it when West London Mental Health came to the meeting, that actually I think that's a focus of what I think there probably would be scope for us to scrutinise in the borough, in terms of how patients are accessing that and some of the challenges and some of the barriers potentially in terms of how that's being looked at. But I was going to raise that next week when we looked at the work programme at the meeting. But I thought that might be something that would be worth considering looking at in terms of access as well.
No, that's great. Well, pass that on, but also for your meeting next Thursday, I think comments are well made. Great. So we note the report. This will now go to cabinet. Sam.
Yeah, that's correct. It will go to cabinet the next available meeting, depending on where we're falling in the cycle of reports and things. So yeah.
Great. And then we now have the report for one of the scrutiny panels. Next meeting we'll consider the other panels, but we've got the tackling the cost of living crisis, which was chaired by Councillor Alexander. You've got the reports in front of you. I don't know if there are a couple of people here on that committee. Councillor Hershey on it as well. And if there's any you want to share or make some comments.
Yeah, obviously that was very kind of acute, panel dealing with pressing issues at the time. So there were lots of aspects which we have looked into. And some of them I see have already been actioned because they needed to be actioned to be timely and effective. So things have already been happening, which is very, very nice to see. There are lots of aspects here which might be a bit more complex. I want to pick out one, especially because we are keeping Percival House. We actually visited the community hubs. We have seen how really important they are. And how many people really rely on having somebody to talk to face about sometimes quite difficult problems. And that it's very well used, and the team there is doing fantastic and a very difficult job, sometimes even, with having security guards outside. So it's not an easy job. One thing which we thought was really kind of a negative side. In Ealing Broadway, where we went, there's absolutely no private space. All these very difficult communication happen when you come into the library right there, for literally everybody to hear, and people sit on desks really next to one another, having these sometimes difficult conversations. So this is something which I think really needs to be looked at. Because there were all sorts of security aspects, there were all sorts of really high demands on the people who work there, to such a degree that they have decided to actually have a lunch break in the middle. So they literally all together can go out, almost like a slight community coaching session, going away from all the troubles they hear all day long. So that's very important work, and I think it needs a better space, and that should be really looked at. That was one of the big things which I thought ongoingly should be managed differently. And it's
That's Councillor, and we as this committee will be looking at community hubs in a few months' time. We'll see once this will go through cabinet and recommendations approved. So there's clearly will be some work going on over the next few months, and then we'll take a look at it again in about 6 months' time, well, 8 or 9 months' time. Councillor Mohammed.
I'm not sure if it's relevant to this panel, but has it been a review of the support given to vulnerable residents with the energy grants or support? If there's been any raw count who actually claimed and who hasn't, because there's a number of elderly in the community that was unable to access that funding. It was a voucher, and that voucher expired, and if it expires,
quite a good report. They have talked about the vulnerable and people who are having debt problems financially. Yeah, if you read the report, they are clearly stating that, but it is nothing mentioned in the recommendation. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Corder.
Probably you can say.
Councillor Hirsch.
Sure, yeah, we absolutely discussed that in great detail, because it clearly that, already in the process, kind of clearly there was a demand there to kind of enforce the or kind of enlarge the outreach to make sure we kind of offer this to as many people as possible. I'm sure there will be some who have missed it, because with all the effort, I guess to get 100% success rate might be very difficult, but you're right. I'm not sure they're the final numbers at the end, who have missed, and it might be even hard to get these numbers, people who have applied and didn't. But, it was definitely discussed at length and looked at, and solutions were kind of looked at very much so.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Hayes, so Councillor Corder first. So.
Just to say to Councillor Mohammed, read page 57, 4 and 58. 58 on page 58, it's a paragraph 2, clearly stating what is being done and how many households being approached and supported. Thank you.
Councillor Mohammed. Yeah.
Just a final item, just to recommend, I do accept and understand that there's been a great deal of support, but there are some number of, especially the elderly people living in some wards that could not access that because they forgot or didn't understand or whatever reason. So if there's a possibility that can be looked at, the number of especially elderly that was offered that help and didn't take advantage of it, just so it could be identified. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McLeany.
Yeah, I think it's very clearly set on page 58 that the council had actually administered who was dependent to get these funds. And it was made by eligibility based on people with having a low income and people who were eligible for free school meals. So it was kind of an automated collection of residents who are eligible.
Sorry, no, I'm not questioning the selection of who's entitled for it. I'm asking if there's, certain group did not take the funding allocated to them and what has happened to that funding. Thank you.
Well, we'll feed that back to the chair, last year's chair, and see how we progress. I've got Councillor Haley who's online, who's got her hand up.
Hi, Chair. Thank you so much. There was a bit of technical issue. So I just wanted to make a comment. I was also part of the committee member in health, and I just wanted to make a slight comment. So while we were on the health committee, we took a visit to the United Anglo-Caribbean Society, who were a community that supports vulnerable adults and elderly in the community. And I just wanted to add from the feedback that the chair and the deputy chair had shared with me it was first time that they have seen.
It was just on the recommendations. I thought recommendation 8, was really a really good practical one about giving professional agencies more direct and easier routes to get help through the council with, direct email addresses, contact numbers. Because I think sometimes, if you're an outside agency trying to support people and then trying to get through, the network and to try to get into who you need to speak to can be really difficult. So I thought in terms of a practical sense and something that you wouldn't have thought would be very hard to implement. And I thought that was actually quite a good I thought that was a really good recommendation. I just want to sort of highlight that. It's good. It says consider giving dedicated telephone numbers, email address. So I thought that's something that really you'd hope we'd try and push to do. I thought it'd be quite a relatively easy thing that might actually make getting help for some people through these agencies an easier task.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. When I was reading through the reports, I was reading through the health report, and I was just really interested to read about impact on health on disabled people. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be lovely to read something about what we're doing in terms of employment and in terms of education opportunities for disabled people? Then lo and behold, I read the report for Scrutiny Panel 1, and there is actually something about that in there, and that's actually really helpful and interesting. But just one thing, I'll just say that on the recommendation number 4, that there should be a review of the recruitment process for apprenticeship schemes to identify any barriers and to make it more inclusive for residents that might have specific needs. I'll just hope that that does actually cover people with disabilities as well, because I think that's something that's actually quite crucially important, that we do reach out and ensure that everybody can contribute towards society and receive likewise fulfilment from doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. How are we doing with Councillor Haley?
We've got somebody that's just in there.
Can you all hear me?
The item, so we'll give it. I could ask her to.
Hello?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Hello? Hello?
This is why we don't like hybrid meetings anymore. Serve their purpose. Yes, Councillor Tyre.
Just to come in sharing Councillor Rice's point, and while the chair of the panel isn't here, I do remember she was very personally committed to that point on accessibility, and I remember there was a bit of discussion as well about how things are communicated as well. And we sometimes think about things being online and everything, and of course it's really good they are online, but I know that particular point, it was deliberated on quite a lot in the meeting, and it was just one of the kind of the clearest outcomes of it, just to make sure that it was very inclusive and thinking, not just if there were any accessibility issues or anything like that, and sometimes as well, I think there was a bit of discussion on when someone's kind of getting underway in a process and they've done the first part, but then it all feels very daunting, that there would be a sense of following up and checking in, and so there was a lot of thought given to it, but just well done for highlighting it to the end. So.
Thank you, Councillor Tyde. I just think it's just great to continue to highlight that, especially for anyone who might be listening in at home, to make sure that they're aware that it's something that we've talked about. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Haley, we think we might be able to get you on. Are you still there? Have you given up?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent.
Oh God, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a bit of a fight. So my comment, I just want to go back and take you guys. I was part of the health committee, and we've decided to visit the United Anglo-Caribbean Society in Acton to see their services and see how the health can really support them, and their feedback was really good. It was the first time that this visit was done to the society, but I would personally recommend that the health committee should, they should push forward to visiting vulnerable communities, so we can really tackle loneliness, mental health and isolation, and also speaking to a lot of different communities in the borough, and that's what they're struggling with, mental health and isolation. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much again. We'll note that unfortunately the new chair isn't at the meeting tonight, so some very good ideas for him, but we'll make sure he hears them. And thank you very much. So we've already noted the health panel. Now Scrutiny Panel 1. Are we happy to note it? And then it moves on to the next stage, which is the cabinet. We agreed. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of tonight's business. The next meeting will be on the 5th of October, and that's when we will look at budget and the other scrutiny panel reports. But we may have a call in on the 3rd of August. That depends on the opposition parties calling in next week's cabinet agenda. It could be Labour members. It could be Labour members. It could be me. when would we know by?
We would know about that by on the cabinet date, which I think is yeah, that's well. We'll know by the close of business on the 24th of July, whether that's going ahead or not.
Obviously, it is holidays, it's school holiday time. So we may or may not have a meeting, we don't know. If you know you can't make it, please let me know as soon as possible so we can get a substitution in. Last year, we had an equivalent meeting. We can do hybrid if people are away, but it's not ideal. So not now, but let me know offline and then we can get subs lined up if the meeting takes place. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, and see you next time. Thank you. Well.